So the mental illness I have chosen to talk about for Pisces is schizophrenia. I'm going to start by talking about the symptoms of schizophrenia, and they label the symptoms as positive or negative. And this doesn't mean like the positive symptoms are good symptoms and the negative ones are bad symptoms. I'll start with the positive symptoms. The positive symptoms are the presence of something that is not normally there at baseline functioning. So the first positive symptom that I'll talk about are delusions. Delusions are untrue beliefs or ideas. They don't necessarily have to be based in reality, so they're illogical. I'm gonna give some examples of delusions. Erotomanic. This is the delusion of falling in love. This is when the individual believes that they are in love with someone or that someone else is in love with them, but it's all in their head. And they become hyper-focused with an erotic or romantic relationship with another individual that is not reciprocated. The most common delusion that people who have schizophrenia experience is persecution. This is the belief that someone or something is persecuting them, basically that they're out to get them. And this could be a person or an entity or the government. So it causes the individual to be very suspicious of others and mistrustful. There's also the Grandiosity Delusions, and I mentioned this in my Aquarius video for bipolar disorder. It's the same thing, grand, big ideas that are delusional, but it's different from bipolar disorder because these are delusions. It's not a manic episode. Jealousy is the delusion that others are jealous of them, so this makes them think that they are above other people, or they themselves will feel an overwhelming jealousy of others. Delusions are incredibly distressful for people who have schizophrenia, and no logic will get them out of it. No logic will get them to stop believing in the delusion. The next positive symptom is disorganized thinking or speech. They form loose associations, which is basically when they bounce from one thing to another. They take something and they keep going with it, but it doesn't make sense. It's not coherent. And there's the hallucinations, which are unreal sensations, and they pertain to the five senses. Auditory hallucinations are the most common, which is basically hearing things that aren't there. They can usually start as whispers, but then they grow louder. Some of them are command hallucinations, where they will tell them to do things that are destructive, and this causes a lot of distress on the individual. And then there's visual hallucinations, and these can show up as shadows or something that they think that they see, but then they become full people or full animals or objects that actually move, and they see them move. And it's difficult for them to tell apart a delusion from reality. Most of the time they can't. There's even rarer ones, I don't know how rare they are, but tactile hallucinations, which is like feeling things that aren't there. So an example of this is like feeling like there's bugs crawling on them. Or olfactory hallucinations, which is smelling things that aren't there. So the last positive symptom is an inappropriate affect, which is basically that their emotional expression does not match the context or their emotional experience. So now I'm going to talk about the negative symptoms, and the negative symptoms mean the absence of something that is normally there at baseline functioning. So the first one is, I think it's pronounced alogia. Can't remember how my teacher said it, but it's basically a lack of speech. There's also the flat affect, which is a lack of emotional expression. So this can show up as just a blank stare. There's also avolition, which is the lack of volition. And this is basically meaning apathy. And this is where they start to not care for themselves. They don't feel motivated. And then there's withdrawal, which is a lack of engagement. And something rare that usually only happens in severe cases of schizophrenia is catatonia. I think that's how you pronounce it. There's so many like medical terms, and this basically means waxy flexibility, and it's a state of mental unconsciousness, and their muscles become frozen. You can basically move their body And it can actually, in severe cases of schizophrenia, it can last hours. It usually just lasts a few minutes. It's pretty rare for it to last like days or weeks. And it usually comes during very high levels of stress, and the individual can't remember anything that happened during it. They'll be awake, or they'll look awake, but they'll just be frozen. And for all these symptoms, the positive and negative symptoms that I just described, a person doesn't have to have all of these to have schizophrenia. So there's a lot of research that goes into schizophrenia. One thing for sure is there's a really strong genetic link. Basically, the closer the relative, the stronger the genetic influence. Also, neurotransmitters, there's a dopamine hypothesis, which is excessive amounts that are correlated with the hallucinations. So the excessive amounts of dopamine could cause the hallucinations, or that the hallucinations themselves cause excessive amounts of dopamine. Also, the brain structure of people who have schizophrenia, the cerebral cortex, certain areas of it may be more or less active than others. Some social influences that could also be a part of it is a parental influence and their expressed emotions. So when a parent expresses negative emotions, the voices that they hear end up being what their parents said to them. So the reason I picked schizophrenia for Pisces is because of Neptune and the kind of influence and effect that Neptune has on a Pisces life, or even just people who have a lot of strong Neptune influences, like a lot of planets in the 12th house, or even just one planet in the 12th house, especially if it's a personal planet. It makes a person delusional. And Neptune is like fog. It's like you're trying to look through to something that you think is there, but it's like Neptune hides it. And I think Pisces go through life having that fog on their life because their sun is Neptune. Their sun, their identity is that fog. Wherever Pisces is in your chart, Neptune is adding delusion and mystery there. And it can be hard to see the reality of what is there, of what Neptune is influencing. If you're a Pisces sun, it can be hard to see the reality of yourself, of like even your own issues, or even the reality of you not seeing reality. Pisces are huge escapists. They don't want to see reality. They want to just see what they want to see. And so Pisces kind of make this harder on them when they escape seeing reality or being in reality. I also feel like because 12th house is the subconscious and Pisces is kind of like everything in the world, like they take on everything of the world because it's the last sign, so it takes on every sign, and every sign represents like an aspect of life, of our lives and of life, the world, the universe in general. So I think this kind of makes Pisces connected to things that we don't understand, that we can't see. They become connected with things that aren't really of this world. And it's kind of funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's kind of sad actually, because in other cultures, schizophrenia, when someone is schizophrenic, they are seen as possessed because, you know, they're showing the symptoms. And I think I'm not saying that like Pisces are possessed. I don't want to make it like as dark, but I do think that maybe people can think that Pisces are a little crazy. I hate to use that word when I'm talking about mental illness, but kind of, because they kind of get messages from the universe, from God, whatever you believe in, because they are connected to that. Like they really are. And they can also be delusional about it too. They can have like, you know, I'm not saying that they hallucinate, but they can also just kind of think that they do, like see meaning in something when there is no meaning in it. But I think it's just like that fine line of being like, yes, this is a Pisces power, like I have access to these messages from the universe, to this spiritual, subconscious, psychic energy, because Pisces is kind of connected to that spiritual world, whatever it may be. And then, you know, again, that line between having access to it but also like being kind of delusional about it. I think it's just hard for Pisces to probably find that balance. So that's why I picked schizophrenia. With what Neptune represents, Pisces as a sign, they do represent delusions and seeing things or believing in things or feeling things that probably aren't real. Not all the time, but it can get to that point, especially if you have more challenges to overcome with whatever Neptune influences you have, or Pisces influences you might have, or 12th house influences, again. So that's it, guys. That was my last video. I hope that you liked it. I really loved filming this series. Like, it was actually really, really fun. I'm actually kind of sad that I'm done. But I already have other series planned out. I really hope that you guys learned something from this series. I hope that you liked it. And let me know what you think. And yeah, thank you for watching.